4 seconds off the pace is the humiliating gap Lance Stroll just reported to the race after preseason testing in Bahrain. Before you write off Aston Martin's 2026 season as a total disaster, you need to hear the conspiracy theory that is terrifying the entire paddock. It is Tuesday, February 17, 2026, and as per win calendar, the Formula One world is in a state of absolute shock. The first major test of the revolutionary new regulation era just wrapped up in Bahrain with brutal headlines. The Aston Martin AMR 26, confirmed by Formula One as the first car penned by the legendary Adrian Newey since his move from Red Bull, looks like a lemon. According to Fox Sports, it completed the fewest laps of any team, just 206 across 3 days, and suffered severe overheating issues with the new Honda power unit. Lance Stroll looked visibly crushed, telling Racing News 365 the car was over 4 seconds slower than the leaders. Despite the media calling it a crisis, Fernando Alonso is unusually calm. Insiders like Juan Pablo Montoya are suggesting that the car we saw in Bahrain isn't the real car at all. They believe the genius of aerodynamics is pulling the biggest bluff in modern F1 history by hiding a radical technical loophole until the lights go out in Melbourne. We need to look at the raw numbers from last week because they are genuinely alarming. Aston Martin didn't just struggle, they barely ran. Planet F1 reported that the AMR 26 spent more time in the garage on jack stands than it did on the tarmac. When it did run, the bodywork was sliced open with crude cooling vents just to stop the Honda engine from cooking itself. On the timing screens, Aston Martin F1 showed they were nowhere, languishing at the bottom and battling with the back markers. The team publicly blamed a data anomaly on day one, but the onboard footage told a different story. The car looked heavy, lazy in rotation, and frankly, unfinished. Any normal team would be hitting the panic button right now. Yet when the garage doors closed, there was no shouting or frantic meetings visible to the press. There was just a quiet, methodical packing up of equipment. This might be the silence of defeat, or the poker face of a team that knows exactly what they are holding back in the factory. The official narrative coming out of Silverstone is almost too convenient. Adrian Newey has been telling everyone who will listen that the project is behind schedule. He officially started in March 2025, and the team claims their new wind tunnel wasn't fully operational for the 2026 model until April. That supposedly put them 4 months behind rivals like Ferrari and Mercedes, who have been working on these new active aero regulations since January 1st. It serves as the perfect excuse for a slow car to say it only came together at the last minute. But it is hard to believe Adrian Newey, a man who famously sketches winning designs on napkins, spent his gardening leave doing nothing. Newey admitted earlier this month that the philosophy for this car came to him back in April 2024, months before he even walked through Aston Martin's doors. The timeline of being behind feels less like a reason for failure and more like a carefully constructed alibi to lower expectations before the main event. Engineers at Mercedes and Ferrari are losing sleep over a specific technical rumor. The 2026 regulations banned the complex Venturi tunnels that dominated the last era, forcing teams to run flat floors. Whispers from Italy suggest Newey has found a gray zone to mechanically seal the floor using the suspension geometry itself. The theory is that under high load, the car squats in a specific way that mimics the banned ground effect to suck the car to the track without breaking the rules. We didn't see this on the car in Bahrain because the floor edge looked basic and almost generic. That is the key detail. If you have found a loophole that skirts the spirit of the rules, the last thing you do is bolt it onto the car during a televised test where 4K cameras can photograph every millimeter. You run a dummy floor, collect basic data, and keep the weapon in the crate until it is too late for the FIA to ban it. If you are enjoying this deep exploration of F1's biggest mystery, hit subscribe and the notification bell right now. We track these technical wars every single week, so you don't miss a beat. We need to discuss why the engine problems might actually be good news. Those overheating issues with the Honda power unit might, ironically, be the biggest clue that the car is fast. History teaches us that Newey pushes packaging to the absolute limit. Remember the McLaren MP418 or the early Red Bulls? They were always tight, aggressive, and fragile in testing because Newey wraps the bodywork so closely around the engine to maximize airflow that cooling becomes a nightmare. The fact that the AMR26 is overheating suggests Newey hasn't played it safe. He has compromised cooling for aerodynamic performance. The crude holes they cut in the bodywork in Bahrain were likely a temporary fix just to get mileage. The real cooling solution, likely an intricate internal ducting system, probably wasn't ready or wasn't shown. A reliable, slow car is a failure. A fast, fragile car is just a puzzle waiting to be solved. The smoke coming out of the back of the Aston isn't incompetence. It is the sign of a design pushed to the razor's edge. Fernando Alonso does not tolerate failure. We have seen him drag teams through the mud publicly when the car is slow. Yet here he is, facing a potential back row start in his final contract year, and he is smiling. He told reporters on Sunday that Melbourne's car is going to be very different and insisted there is no question mark on the chassis side. This is a man who knows 2026 might be his swan song. If the car was truly a tractor, Alonso would be politicking, leaking complaints, or looking for an exit. Instead, he is preaching patience. His body language in the paddock was relaxed, almost smug. He knows what is coming in the update package. Alonso has driven for Newey's rivals for 2 decades, so he knows better than anyone that you don't judge a Newey car until Q3 on Saturday. His calmness is arguably the most terrifying data point for the rest of the grid. We have confirmation from the man himself that the car for the Australian Grand Prix will be a significant evolution from the testing mule. Adrian Newey explicitly stated this fact. In the old days, teams brought the real car to the first test, but with the cost cap and limited wind tunnel time, the strategy has shifted. There is no reason to show your hand in February. The Melbourne spec is likely sitting in the simulation rigs at Silverstone right now, showing numbers that would make Max Verstappen sweat. The parts we saw in Bahrain were likely just placeholder components to check reliability and basic correlation. The front wing, the floor edges, and the diffuser strakes will all likely change. Juan Pablo Montoya put it best when he said Adrian is not going to run anything in the test. The car that rolls out of the garage for FP1 in Australia could be visually distinct, mechanically superior, and potentially controversial. You can smell the fear in the comments from rival team principals. Red Bull's new boss and Toto Wolff haven't taken the bait. When asked about Aston Martin's struggles, the Mercedes and Red Bull chiefs deflected because they know the game. They remember 2009, when Ross Brawn showed up with a car that looked simple but had the double diffuser that destroyed the field. They know that 2026 is a reset year, the perfect storm for a singular genius to spot something everyone else missed. The fact that Aston Martin is so far off the pace is actually more suspicious than if they were mid-pack. Being 4 seconds slow is an anomaly. It implies the car isn't being driven in its intended window. The data coming from the competitor's GPS likely shows Aston Martin lifting early on straights, braking early, and carrying strange fuel loads. The paddock knows that Newey doesn't build slow cars. He builds monsters that sometimes take a few weeks to wake up. We face 2 scenarios in 3 weeks. One possibility is that the disaster is real. The Honda integration failed, the late start was fatal, and Alonso retires in frustration, leaving the Lawrence Stroll project in ruins. But the second scenario is the one we are all waiting for. The crates open in Melbourne, a radically different machine emerges, and Aston Martin pulls a Brawn GP. If Newey has indeed cracked the code of the 2026 active aero regulations while everyone else was playing it safe, we aren't just looking at a race win. We are looking at the start of a new dynasty. The 4-second gap vanishes, replaced by a pole position that leaves the paddock stunned. This isn't just about a car. It's about the legacy of the sport's greatest designer. He didn't move to Silverstone to fight for 10th place. He went there to drop one final mic on the sport. The truth is waiting to be loaded onto a cargo plane for Australia. Whether it's a tragic failure or a masterclass in deception, we are about to witness history. If you want to see who was right, make sure you're subscribed. See you on the grid.